everyone. So we are live again. Author Live Chat with Fans Sunday series, real life inspiring stories. Today talks December 2021, 8 p.m. CST, and we have author Chris Patrick joining us today. Chris is actually the author of Disasters to Dreams, and I read his book. And I really liked his book. I thought of having him on the show to talk a little bit more about his journey. So before we dive into that, let's learn a little bit about the author. Chris Patrick is a real estate consultant and founder of the Patrick Group, a premier real estate firm in Las Vegas. With over 100 million sold since 2013, he was named in the top 1% for all Las Vegas Realtors and the number one top producer for Signature Real Estate Group. Previously, he owned three successful businesses and spent 15 years in sales, marketing, and customer service. So you can visit chrispatrick.net to learn more about Chris. So without further ado, let's welcome Chris to the show. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Jasmina. How you doing tonight? Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
I am doing really great, and thank you for asking. Thank you for also joining my show. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining the show. So I've actually briefly introduced yourself, but I think it would be great to have you say a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned a couple of things. I run a real estate team here in Las Vegas. I'm married to my wife Erin for 3 years now, and we have a now 1 year old baby daughter who just turned one about 2 weeks ago. So it's been very exciting. Last couple of years, especially with me writing the book and everything last year as well. Um, I'm originally from the Bay Area, California, and I spent 10 years in Breckenridge, Colorado, pursuing my dream to snowboard every day. So I was there from 1991 till 2001. I had a couple of businesses there, and I've been living in Las Vegas since 2001, 20 years now. Time flies, right?
Absolutely. Time flies. Yes, I have to agree with you on that. And Chris, I think actually thank you for the book. And it was a pleasure reading your book. And I thought of connecting with you today to talk a little bit more about the book. And so, what actually motivated you to write the book?
I've had a lot of traumatic things happen to me in my life, I guess you could say. And, I was talking to my wife one day about some of the things that I had been through, since childhood and, things that happened when I was in middle school and stuff like that. And she said, "Man, you've had a rocky road of a life. You should write a book about this." Everybody always says that, "Oh, we're going to write a book. You should write a book." But I took that seriously. I thought, yeah, I should write a book about this because I think I can help a lot of people by showing them through example of some of the bad things that have happened to me and I've been able to overcome them. I think I can really help a lot of people by sharing some of my stories. So the whole premise for the book comes from wanting to help people overcome obstacles, setbacks, failures, mistakes, things like that. So it's been an incredible journey to put pen to paper and relive all of those experiences all over again. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be really helpful for the readers. So I'm really happy about it.
Okay. I actually have to say that, when I was reading a book, I got this feeling of reading a little bit of Mark Manson's book, and also, if you know Evan Carmichael, his book Built to Serve. That was also, I mean, some of the elements in his book is also, it reminds me of that because you had this at the end of the chapter, you had this section where people can reflect and ask themselves, what is it what is it in for me, right? So and we start by understanding a little bit about your background, your childhood, your father, right? I think from not having a good father figure to later finding one and being really attached to him until his very last day. So I think you learned a little bit more. I think like he has been an inspiration in your life as well. So maybe you would like to tell us a little bit about that, your childhood, your parents.
Yeah, like you said, my biological father kind of left our family when I was very young, and my mom was kind of doing the things on her own for a little while until she met who he's my stepfather, but I refer to him as dad. He's my dad in my book, right? So yeah, it was just a 180, from my biological father was just a piece of work, if you will, for lack of a better term, to try to keep it PC. And having my stepfather come in, and he was a man of great integrity. He had a great business ethics. He was just a really stand-up guy. He was always compassionate, and he accepted me and my brother as his own, which really felt nice. It was a good feeling to have somebody love you, unconditionally, that wasn't even blood. So that was a real turning point, when he came into our lives.
Right. I still remember the part where you he was someone really instrumental in your life until his very last days, and especially when you were accused of false rape, and talk about that a little bit more. I think anyone who has gone through that would definitely had a very traumatic period of time, trying to come out of, or at least trying to face with society, family, and friends, and how your family supported you during that time, and how that actually didn't stop you from finding someone in your life, a special one in your life. So, because I think when people actually face these kind of traumatic events in their life, they would, go to the extent of really hating people, or probably in your case, maybe if it is women, then it's women, you like, hating them, or probably just trying to like stay away from women, so that, it's like a kind of a mechanism to protect themselves, right? So how do you overcome that?
I kind of lost you there a little bit, Jasvita, as far as the audio was concerned. Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
Just summarize the
How do you
question.
how do you overcome the traumatic event of overcoming the false accusation of rape that that you had to go through?
Yeah, so I've learned a lot over the years, right? I'm 52 now, and I didn't always know these things to be true. Now, fortunately, I do. But if I was to go back and say to myself, how can I help overcome a traumatic event or something like that? One thing that I've realized is that life is not perfect for anybody, right? Everybody's life has some kind of bumpy road or slippery slope, or there's mistakes, there's failures, there's accidents, there's bad things happen to everybody. Nobody's life has ever been perfect. And understanding that is very important, for one, because a lot of people think every time something goes wrong that it's the end of the world. I can't believe this. This is ridiculous. Why does this happen to me? I can't believe it. So understanding that bad things happen to everybody is very important. Another thing is that you have to realize that there's always something to be gained from every experience, whether that it was a mistake on your part, or it was just a failure, or it was or wasn't your fault. There's always either something to be learned, a lesson to be learned to make yourself better for the next time, or if there's no lesson, sometimes it's just a serendipity where you ended up meeting somebody that you wouldn't have met, or you ended up going to a certain place that you never would have gone to before, or some circumstance happens. There's some little diamond in that pile that you can dig out of there and use for your benefit later on. So, you know, people say, oh, there's no such thing as failure, but there is, and failures happen to everyone, and that's okay, because there's something to be gained from every failure if you learn how to look at it from the right perspective.
Right. So, fantastic, Patrick. I think we probably should look at the um, positive side of any event that's happening in our lives. And I think, that's how we, like the book says, turning disasters to dreams. I think that's one of the key aspects of what you're trying to say in the book. And we are looking at your website over here. This is chrispatrick.net, and this is the book, and people can actually learn more about the book over here and buy the books. Also, we have the buy link over here as well. Yes, this is the buy link, right? So, Chris, um, and coming to the part where you mentioned about attracting or probably manifesting what we want, our desires, right? I think one of the events that you wrote in your book that really captured my attention is you and your wife, the both of you were trying to conceive, and you had some challenges coming your way, and so that was really interesting, and and how the both of you finally managed to overcome that. It was really interesting. So could you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of people are trying to manifest something, but they're just very frustrated with the process of it, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that that was a very difficult time for us, a very trying time. Um, we had wanted to have a child, but the powers that be said that wasn't going to happen for us in the traditional way, and so we went down the road of domestic infant adoption, um, and we had gotten matched with a potential birth mother, and she was pregnant, and she was about I don't know when I say about 3 or 4 months along, something like that, and we were going along. We spent about 2 months thinking that she was going to place her child with us. We're very excited. We were buying clothes and setting up the nursery, and telling all our friends, and we were going with her to ultrasound appointments and going with her to the doctor and everything like that. We became good friends with her, and then it turned out that the whole thing was a scam. It was an adoption scam. She was, trying to scam us for money and for emotional support. And we found this out through social media, which really, it was devastating, to know that the baby that we thought was ours was not ours, and it was never intended to be ours. And so that was a hard pill to swallow, you know,
Mhm.
because we had done so much planning and preparation for it, and it was something we had wanted for a long time. And I finally had to have a sit down with my wife because she was very depressed. And I said, we, no matter what happens, we have to let this go. The baby that is meant for us will come for us, but first we have to let this go. We can't keep holding on to this because nothing good is going to happen if we keep holding on to this. We have to let go, and sometimes you just have to let go of stuff. When something bad happens, you got to let it go. Take what you can from it, and then let the rest go. You have to. You can't carry that around with you on like a backpack, full of concrete. You got to let it go. So we did. We let it go. We had the difficult conversation that night. I think it was like 2 days after Thanksgiving, and the next morning, Jasvina, the phone rang, and it was our social worker, and she said, "We have a new family for you, and the baby's already been born. She's at the hospital right now. Are you interested?" And we said, "Yeah, we're interested. Yes, we're interested." So yeah, it was a wild ride, to go from feeling that low to feeling that high the next day, because we let it go. We were able to let it go, and that's our baby daughter. That was just over a year ago that that happened. So, and here we are a year later, and she's just turned one, and she's a little bundle of joy.
Amazing. I mean, I think it really teaches, and the reason why I wanted to ask you specifically on this is because of manifestation and also the power of letting go. Because I think a lot of people, they struggle to let go things and they become their own stumbling block, to just block all the damn things that's supposed to come into their life, and that is the reason I think, in a lot of occasions, manifestations actually go wrong, because we are very much attached to the outcome, that we get really anxious throughout the process, thinking that how is it going to happen. Uh, am I right to say that, Chris?
Yes, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head right there, Jasmina. When we desire something and we start trying to consciously create it and we focus on it and we're trying to manifest it, sometimes we squeeze onto it so tight. And our conscious minds, we have a tendency of figuring out the best way to get from point A to point B, right? We're going to make a spreadsheet. We're going to do our research. We're going to watch videos. We're going to talk to people. We're going to have a game plan. We know exactly how we're going to get from point A to point B, or at least we think we do. But it rarely, rarely works out exactly like you think it's going to. And so it's important to understand and let the universe, be open to other possibilities, right? Whenever you're so focused on getting from, right where you are now to your dream or your goal, and you're so focused on getting there in a specific way, you limit the number of opportunities that the universe can deliver to you to get you to that goal. So if you really just focus on the goal itself and not so much on how you're going to get there, you're going to expand and open up so many more possibilities, because the universe has a twisted way of steering you in the right direction, right? But you have to be open to see those opportunities when they come.
Right. Very well put, Chris, because I think we are so fixated to the result, to the extent that we get anxious and we get worked up, while we're going through that process of from point A, like you said, to point B. You're just so stressed, all the way from point A to point B. You're just stressed, and that I think that's the reason why it even slows down, in getting what we want. And you also wrote about your journey, your entrepreneurial journey, and coming from your family background, and how did you get into this entrepreneurship, and like the world of entrepreneurs. I'm sure it was not an easy ride, because coming from a family, probably if your family is not from that background, then shifting from that point to a completely different world is probably something very challenging. I think you wrote pretty extensively on that as well in the book. So, what was the main challenge in becoming an entrepreneur in the early days? So,
You know what? I think I can pinpoint that down to one thing, really, Jasmina, and is that I don't like working for other people. I really don't. And I was bound and determined to do things my own way and create my own business so that I didn't have to work for anybody else. I have
mhm,
worked for people and I've done some awful jobs. I've cleaned toilets and I've taken out trash and I've mopped floors and I've dug holes, and I've done a lot of low end jobs. And there's always the risk of being fired, and you never know about your job security and this and that, and you're never going to get paid that well, and there's always somebody telling you what to do, and I just didn't like that. That's just not for me. I'm
mhm,
just one of these people that I want to make my own hours. I want to make my own rules. I want to create my own business so that if something goes wrong, it's on me. I don't want to rely on anybody
Mm-hmm.
else. I feel a very proud sense of independence and freedom
Mm-hmm.
in creating, my own businesses and things like that. So it's a very liberating feeling to have something of your own and say, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a very proud, you can say, I made this, I built this,
Yeah.
that's cool. You can't take that, no one can take that away from you.
Yes. Exactly. Being an entrepreneur myself, I think I can really relate to what you're saying. And yeah, I'm 32, by the way, so so I started young as well, but I think I learned quite a bit in my journey. It was an easy one. It is normally quite lonely, and it's a lonely journey. And you've also mentioned about the importance of having a community to support yourself, and it's also not easy. I mean, finding the right community is also not easy. And tell us a little bit about that. I really want to know your views and opinions on finding your tribe, and making sure that you stick with them to have that momentum that propels you forward.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and congratulations to you too on having the entrepreneurial spirit. I would have guessed you to be in your early 20s, so you're doing good on that. Um, yeah, it is a lonely journey, like you said. Being an entrepreneur, you'll sometimes be sitting at your desk for 8 or 10 hours or more straight, you know, and no one knows what you're going through except for you. No one knows how hard it is or how many battles you have to fight that day just to get a little bit ahead. Nobody knows. They only see it at the very end after you've achieved some level of success, and they'll say, "Oh, it was a it must be nice to be that guy." But they didn't see all those hours and months and years you spent grinding away. They didn't see that. So it can be a lonely journey, and it is important to have a tribe or a group, some people that you can call your own. Absolutely. One of the reasons for that is that you shouldn't be afraid to ask people for help. If there's something that someone can help you with, if there's a mentor you can seek out, if there's a golf pro at the golf course, hire him. Hire the golf pro. You're going to get better faster if you hire him, right? Um, and by the same token, it's very nice to be able to help other people out too, right? So if you can offer your guidance or your mentorship to somebody who needs it, that's going to help them propel them forward. You know, Success seems to come in groups, right? You're gonna do all the hard work yourself, most of it you are, but it's okay to reach out and ask some people for help sometimes, and it's very good to give help at the same time. And there's a little sense of community that comes with that. So when one wins, we all win, type of thing.
Mhm. And that's an interesting point, because it reminds me of why people quit bad bosses, right? I think why people quit, toxic workplaces, and they end up starting things on their own, or probably shifting from one place to another place, like, one company to another company, is because of the lack of support, or probably the lack of sense of belonging, community support as well. So now, being a boss, right? Um, how's it for you and your employees? Like, if you have people working for you, what are the things that you're trying to do different?
One thing my dad always taught me, and he owned his own concrete business for the whole time that he was part of our lives. He owned his own concrete company. And one thing he taught me that I will never forget, he said, you pay and treat your employees well and with respect. He said, don't take them for granted. Don't try to pay them at the lowest wage you can. Pay them well and treat them well, and they'll stick around for you. And so he'd never had anybody, quit, or, he never had to fire people, things like that, because they were so grateful for him because he was such a good person and such a compassionate, caring person, and they got paid so well. Why would they want to leave? So I try to treat people that, are working for us as I would a family member. We have functions and things like that. We'll have like Christmas parties or bowling events or whatever, and we always, get together and show our appreciation for them. And yeah, it's another sense of community. Just treat them like you would want to be treated or better, and that's how you keep people around. It's a good business practice, but it's also a good personal practice.
Yes, I think it gives you some sense of liberation and some sense of pride, if I can say that, to be able to change how you want to treat your employees better, and as compared to how your previous employers would have treated you, and now you have the power to change how you do things. And I think that's really liberating. I mean, especially, at least for me, that's how I see it. I feel like, hey, I have the power to do things differently. And that's really, really fantastic. It really motivates me as well.
I'm sorry, Jasmine, I lost you on that last question.
Yes. I mean, I feel that, when you can treat your employees better, it gives you a sense of liberation.
Well, it just feels good, I mean, I'm a compassionate person by nature. I'm a good person. I mean, I'm going to hold the door open for the lady at the bank or whatever. I'm going to let somebody in traffic. I think it's just the right thing to do. I've always believed in a cooperation over competition thing myself. I mean, everybody seems to be caught up in this, I got to do better than the next guy, or everyone's in constant competition. But I think if we all cooperate, we can all get to where we're going a whole lot faster. So if I can cooperate and make somebody else's life better, that's working for us or whatnot, yeah, I'm going to do that 100%. Plus, they're going to stick around for me.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we are nearing to the end of the show, Chris, and anything that you would like to tell the viewers and your potential readers out there, or those who have read your book before, what do you have to say to them, Chris?
Yeah, I guess I'd like people to know, anybody who's going through a hardship or made a mistake or a failure and you can't seem to let it go or move on from that. Just again, realize that there's something to be taken away from it that's good, right? I'm not saying that put on this fake happy face and everything's positive, and it's not. That's not what I'm talking about. Find the little nugget of gold that's in that pile and use it to your advantage, and then let the rest of it go, right? Everybody has gone through these things, maybe not the exact same things you have, but everybody's gone through something, I guarantee you that. So just recognize that not everybody's life has been perfect. You can find some little nugget of gold in every setback, and don't ever quit. I mean, you have to have a no quit attitude. It's not about how many times you get knocked down, it's about how many times you're willing to get back up and keep going. So the people that have achieved success have been knocked down more times than you will ever know, right? So just keep going, and the universe has got your back.
Mm-hmm. Right. And thank you so much, Chris. I have actually shared the your website, and this is about the book. And again, this is chrispatrick.net, and people can actually go to this website to learn more about your book and yourself and get a copy of your book as well. So thank you so much, Chris, for joining me, and it was a pleasure talking to you, and also, sharing a little bit of your personal experiences. It was really a joy speaking to you. Thank you so much, and hopefully we will, meet again in another show. Probably, hopefully, if you have any other books, that is going to come up next. Are you planning to write any other books after this?
Well, you know what? Well, first of all, Jasmine, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate your offer, and it was a real honor and a pleasure to be on your show. I hope your listeners and your viewers got some good value. Um, right now, I'm not working on another book right yet. I'm working on a course, a video course that is going to be kind of like a more in-depth version of the book. So, if you like the book, then the course is really going to be a deeper dive into some of these same topics. So we're going to be working on that for the next 3 or 4, maybe 5 months. Hopefully it'll be out by the next summer, and that'll also be available on the website. But yeah, after that, I foresee another book coming. I do.
Awesome. Right. So hopefully we will touch base again. And till then, take care and stay safe. Chris, thank you so much for joining once again. Thank you.
Absolutely, Jasmine. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.